She doesn't even know why she did it. That's the part that keeps you awake, not the betrayal itself, not the words she said after, cold and disjointed like an actress forgetting her lines, but the fact that behind her eyes there was no remorse, just confusion, as if she herself couldn't explain what made her do it, as if the desire came from somewhere deeper than thought, older than guilt, older than love. You stare at the ceiling, trying to convince yourself it made sense. It doesn't, and it never will. But here's the truth no one speaks aloud. She can't control it. Not the longing, not the cruelty, not the flicker of chaos in her smile when a man bleeds for her. What if I told you Freud saw it, but buried it under layers of theory, too disturbing to say directly? What if all the love songs, the therapists, the books about how to understand women were nothing but polite curtains draped over a force that predates civilization? You're not heartbroken. You're initiated. No man wants to admit it, but every one of us, at least once, has watched a woman destroy something beautiful for reasons even she doesn't understand. Not because she's evil, but because nature doesn't ask for morality. In the dreams his patients whispered through tears, something darker pulsed, something ancient. It asks for movement, entropy, unpredictability, and sometimes sacrifice. Freud never said this plainly. He couldn't. He lived in an age that still believed women were porcelain saints or hysterical enigmas. But in the cracks between his sentences, he called it repression. He called it the unconscious. But what he found, and what he could not unsee, was this, that beneath the soft exterior of femininity lies a mythic force with two faces, the nurturer and the destroyer. We've always known this. Every culture encoded it. Eve with the apple, Lilith with the serpent, the sirens singing men into shipwrecks, the devouring mother in myth, who smothers the son, then weeps at his weakness. You see it now, don't you? This isn't about blaming women. It's about seeing through them. Because the modern man doesn't suffer from lack of access to women. He suffers from a lack of understanding. He tries to love her like a logic puzzle. He tries to fix what she feels. He thinks, if I'm stable, kind, honest, she'll choose me. But she doesn't choose based on reason. She is moved by forces older than language. And until you understand those forces, until you see what Freud glimpsed in his darkest hour, you will always be devoured. Freud once said that the great question that had never been answered, and which he had not yet been able to answer, was, what does a woman want? The irony is, she doesn't know either, because female desire is not linear. It is not noble or predictable, or even safe. It is oceanic, shifting, lunar, and sometimes it longs to burn down the very thing that made it feel safe. You gave her your heart. She needed your danger. You offered stability. She craved chaos. She said she wanted a good man. But her body moved toward the one who didn't ask. You call it hypocrisy. But to the unconscious, it's not contradiction. It's survival. Freud discovered that beneath every personality, every polite surface, lies a seething cauldron of impulses, erotic, violent, hungry, irrational. In men, we bury it. In women, it slips between the cracks, not because they are worse than us, but because they are closer to nature. And nature doesn't care about your feelings. Imagine her as a priestess in a forgotten temple, not of words, but of sensation. She does not know why she feels what she feels. She just is. One moment, warmth. The next, distance. One night, she calls you her future. The next, she disappears into silence like a shadow in a storm. You thought it was you. It never was. Freud's patients, upper-class Viennese women in corsets and tight smiles, began to say strange things when he let them speak without interruption. Some told stories of dreams where they were punished. Others confessed to secret fantasies of being taken, destroyed, adored, forgotten, and touched again. And underneath it all, rage. Rage at fathers. Rage at husbands. Rage at the limits placed on their power. This wasn't hysteria. It was a forbidden truth that female desire is not passive. It is not soft. It is not even safe. It wants to consume. This is what Freud feared. Not because he hated women, but because he saw what no one else dared to see. That the feminine psyche is not just a field of flowers, but a battlefield of impulses. The mother, the lover, the witch, the child, the queen, the wound. And if you meet her without knowing this, if you walk blindly into her world with your logic and plans and expectations, you will be broken, not by her intentions, but by your ignorance, because she doesn't even know what's moving through her. And if you don't know either, you will become the offering. To understand the female mind, Freud had to unearth something most men are too terrified to name, and most women are conditioned to deny. Not trauma, not social pressure, not even repression, but desire without morality. A force so primal, it doesn't care for who you are, only what you awaken. Freud called it the ID. Jung saw it in the anima. But long before either of them gave it a name, ancient myths already whispered the warning. Do not look directly into her eyes when she dances in shadow. You may fall in love with what was never yours to hold. You see, man's desire is focused, directed. It moves like a spear. But woman's desire is atmospheric. It surrounds, it intoxicates, it ensnares. This is not a judgment. It is a recognition of form. And form, like mythology, tells truths that science is too sterile to grasp. In Jungian terms, the anima is the unconscious feminine within the male psyche. But here's the part they don't teach you in school. If you do not make her conscious, she possesses you. She appears not as your soulmate, but as your addiction. Not as a muse, but as a siren. Men project the anima onto women. That's why you idealize her. That's why you ache for her even when she's wrong for you. That's why, when she leaves, you feel like something inside you has died, because it has. She was never just a woman, as if she took something from you, because she did. She was the symbol of your inner feminine, and now she's gone, and you feel hollow, betrayed. But here's what Freud intuited, what even Jung only circled around, that women themselves are also haunted by the unknown inside them. They are not in control of what men awaken. They are not plotting when they destroy. They are not aware when they shift from nurturer to devourer, because much of the feminine psyche lives below the threshold of consciousness. A moonlit realm ruled not by intention, but by affect. He must wrestle his instincts, analyze, suppress, channel. Not, why did I feel this? But I felt it, so I became it. This is the difference between the masculine and the feminine unconscious. A man is split. A woman is what she feels, for better or for worse. That is why, when she cheats or leaves or turns cold, she cannot explain why. Not because she's lying, but because she doesn't know. Because the truth lies too deep for language. And if you demand a reason, you're asking her to build a bridge from the ocean to the sky. Now listen carefully, because this is where it turns. Freud's early patients were not prostitutes or wild women. They were proper wives, daughters of bankers, respectable mothers. And yet, in their unconscious speech, in their slips, in their dreams, something monstrous emerged. Desires that violated social norms. He thought surely these are confabulations, distortions, errors of memory. They were revelations. Sexual fantasies that involved shame, pain, power. Rage toward husbands they claimed to love. Fantasies of death, rebirth, fire. Oh, when the cracks appeared, Freud initially resisted. But over time he realized these were not errors. The unconscious had no morality, no filter. And in women, it was closer to the surface. They could dress it up, smile sweetly, cook, nurture. But when the cracks appeared, a woman could become a storm without warning. The moment she felt dead inside, she would find a man who made her feel alive, not to betray you, but to resurrect herself. Freud wasn't trying to villainize women. He was doing what no man had dared. Listen without interrupting. Observe without judgment. And report, honestly, what he saw, no matter how disturbing. And what he saw was this, that female sexuality was not passive. Keeps testing your strength until you either hit her or leave. It was aggressive. Not like the masculine, which conquers, but like a flame that seduces, consumes, then disappears. The same woman who cradles an infant dreams of being thrown down. The same woman who cries over your absence, fantasizes about your indifference. The same woman who says she wants peace. Do you understand now? You thought it was random. You thought it was your fault. But what moved through her was older than you, older than her. Jung would later build upon this. He said the feminine archetype is both Sophia, divine wisdom, and Lilith, the untamable seductress. But here's the terrifying truth. A woman doesn't get to choose which one she becomes in any given moment, because these are not roles. They are possessions of the psyche, masks worn by deeper instincts. And sometimes, when she looks you in the eye, it is not her speaking, but the ancient force that lives through her. What force? Eros, death, rebirth, the goddess with blood on her lips and milk in her breast. This is why the Stoics warned against idealizing women, not to scorn them, but to remain conscious. Because the moment you put her on a pedestal, you fall to your knees. You give her the power of your inner world. You become feminized, not in body, but in soul. And she, feeling your collapse, becomes disgusted, not consciously, but in her bones. Because her body does not want to mother you. It wants to feel you as a force stronger than her chaos. Freud could never say this publicly. He feared the backlash. But in his private letters, he admitted, there is something in the feminine soul that wants to be overwhelmed, and something in the masculine soul that fears his own power too much to do it. And so, we drift. She rages, lost in a sea of feeling. You retreat, lost in thought, analysis, shame. Neither of you is to blame. You are both victims of unconscious forces that move the species, not the self. But make no mistake, if you do not learn the language of these forces, you will suffer, not because she hates you, but because she was never meant to love you the way you think. She is not your salvation. She is your mirror, and if you cannot look into her, you will never know who you are. So now you see it, not as a man bitter from betrayal, not as a boy begging for answers, but as a witness to something that has always been there, under her perfume, her laughter, her tenderness, the serpent in the garden, the fire beneath the womb, the storm that calls itself love, but asks to be met, not tamed. Freud could never fully map this terrain. No one can, because the feminine is not a landscape. It's a labyrinth. And if you walk into it seeking warmth, you may not notice when the temperature drops, when her gaze shifts, when something inside her hungers for the part of you that won't kneel. That's what no one tells you. She doesn't crave the man who pleases her. She tests him, breaks him, and when he bleeds, she watches, not with cruelty, but with ancient memory. She is searching for the part of him that won't die, because the moment you collapse for her comfort, you are no longer the man she was drawn to. You become safe, and safe is where attraction goes to rot. You see, Freud was not just describing women. He was describing the forgotten contract between man and woman, the dance of polarities. But modern men, raised without fathers, fed romantic lies, softened by guilt, enter this dance like children in a war zone. They think her chaos is a cry for help, They think her desire is logical. They think she knows what she wants. And when she changes, when her love folds inward and her eyes no longer see you, you blame yourself. Or worse, you blame her. But the truth is neither. She is not betraying you. She is returning to source, to the feminine's eternal rhythm, creation, destruction, renewal. And if you cannot stand in the fire of that cycle, you are never meant to hold her. This is not poetry. This is psychobiological law. But here's where it turns. Again, not into sentiment, not into hope, but into sight. You thought love was a reward, that if you were strong, loyal, good enough, you would be chosen. But she was never a gatekeeper. She was a mirror, reflecting the parts of you that still begged to be accepted. Her withdrawal, her silence, her shift toward another man was not a judgment of your worth. It was a summons to descend to the place in you that still needed her approval to feel whole. That is the wound, and that is the gift. Because once you see this, truly see, you realize something chilling. You never really loved her. You loved what she awakened in you, and what she destroyed was your illusion of self. Jung called this the confrontation with the shadow, when the man meets what he has denied, his weakness, his hunger, his rage, his dependency. It is not her fault, but she was the key. The feminine, in all her unpredictability, is not here to comfort you. She is here to initiate you. Into what? Into the death of your boyhood, into the burial of your fantasies, into the cold, clear awareness that no woman can complete you, because there is nothing to complete. You are never missing a half. You are missing a confrontation, and now you've had it. So where does that leave you? Not in hatred, not in despair, but in the beginning, not of the red pill, not of game, not of conquest, but of sovereignty. Because the man who sees the feminine not as an answer, but as a mystery, he no longer worships or resents her. He respects her nature, and he no longer loses himself inside it. Freud tried to warn us, but his time could not handle the truth. Ours still can't, but maybe you can. Maybe tonight, when you stare into the ceiling darkness, you won't ask why she left, but what in you needed her to stay. And in that silence, you may hear the faintest voice, not hers, yours, the one that was buried, beneath obedience, beneath shame, beneath the lies about what love is supposed to feel like. That voice is not loud, but it is sovereign. It does not chase. It does not beg. It remembers. And once you hear it, you'll never confuse possession with love again. You've seen it now. The hidden truth, not about her, but about you. The next time you look into her eyes, will you see a goddess or a mirror? Tell me below. Not what you think, but what you felt and never had words for. Subscribe, not for answers, but for the descent. Because here, we don't escape the unconscious. We face it.